The Church of Rock.
Right now, I know lots of you punk rock fans are going to be happy to hear this chat live, semi-live, from England with Mr. Dave Parsons.
Can you tell just a little bit about Sham 69?
They started in 1975. They were one of the first punk bands in England. They have 5 top 20 hit songs because over there they would take punk rock rather seriously. And if you had a good melody, you could be on the radio if you were a punk rocker, unlike America. But yeah,
they were kind of the first, weren't they?
They were like one of the first oi bands, skinhead, working class punk rock political bands.
Yeah, they definitely were ahead of their.
For sure.
Of the whole pack. And,
yeah, and they're still playing, man. And it's mostly the original guys. Jimmy Percy, same original singer, very eccentric guy. But Dave Parsons is one of the guys that started the band with Jimmy Percy. He's on guitar still. And you ready to hear a little conversation?
Well, yeah, and I just want people to understand the importance of their place in kind of musical history.
Like I said, they were around before the Sex Pistols. They were one of the very first punk bands ever from England.
So great. Thanks for enlightening us, and this is going to be good because I've already heard portions, so let's do this.
Dave Parsons, hello.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm much better now that you're on the phone, finally.
Well, I've got a cigarette on the go, a large glass of single malt Scotch whiskey, and I'm talking to you, and I'm very happy.
Hey, sounds like it. You've got the recipe for fun. So how are things in the UK? What part of the UK are you living in?
Well, I'm down on the south, similar to sort of Charlie Harper country, but a little bit further east. Right on just about 10 minutes in from the coast. And we're in, as you well know, we're in all lockdown here, and it's it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And they've introduced these tiers and stuff, and all the different counties and stuff keep getting put into different tiers, and we're getting higher and higher. And we're now in a tier 4, which is like the highest tier you can get to. And it's a bit of a weird situation. I mean, I've never known anything like this in my life. I mean, I really can virtually, unless it's for essential calls like shopping for food, we're not actually supposed to walk out the front door.
Wow. What a crazy, crazy world, man. We have a similar experience, but it's not as intense as what you're experiencing.
Yeah. Well, I kind of gather that, but there seems to have been an awful lot more resistance in the States than there has been over here to it. And I mean, what with the whole Trump situation and all that shit, you know.
Yeah, the Trump thing. I'm glad that guy's getting out of office quicker, and he's caused so much damage here, and there's so much division. And I probably shouldn't get into it too much because I'm certain there's listeners that are gonna, get angry and maybe turn the radio off if they hear me talking about their God.
No, I'm sure, but I'm glad you said that anyway. So I feel better from that point of view.
Yeah, no, I'm not a Trump guy whatsoever, man. I like people with a heart in their chest.
Yeah, good, cool.
Dave, I became familiar with Sham 69 back in the 80s. I was just a young punk rocker living in the Midwest of America, and the film DOA really broke you through to a lot of the punks here.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. I mean, these kind of things come out, and from an English perspective, you don't actually really know kind of what's working for you or what's getting over. I mean, Sham unfortunately never did major tours of the States. I mean, we played the East and West Coast and a few other places, but it was kind of a shame. I'd have liked to have played a lot more of America, really, and in a lot of ways, we did rely on sort of film footage and stuff from movies like DOA and stuff coming out over in the States.
Yeah. A lot of folks might not know you were formed in Hersham in 1975 and were probably the most successful punk band in the United Kingdom, achieving 5 top 20 singles. Good job, man.
Yeah. It's kind of a lot of people kind of forget that from a sales perspective. Yeah, we had it was a funny thing with Sham. We had a lot of backlash from press and people because we were actually really punk and actually said what we thought, and we didn't slime up to interviewers and press and TV and be all nicey nice, they kind of sort of turn their back and say, "Oh, we don't like these people. We'll move on to someone who's gonna like us, man," you know, and stuff. So yeah, it's the way it goes sometimes, you know.
Very respectful, in my opinion. I also noticed that you guys, back in the day at least, had a lot of concerts that would be plagued by violence. You attracted a large skinhead following. Why was that? Was it because you were more of a working class band?
Well, blimey, that's such a big question. It's of course what happened was, I mean, we're one of the bands that it all gets dumped on, really, but, you know, but it happened to an awful lot of bands at that time. But maybe it's possible that we were one of the first bands that was almost, I use the word, infiltrated, really. I mean, I think it was a time in England where we had extreme right organisations like the National Front and organisations like that, and they had a lot of, and the way they would work it was they would use working class people who would go to football matches on, you would say soccer, I suppose, football matches on Saturday afternoons, and they would cause a lot of trouble and violence and stuff, and they'd get publicity in a perverse kind of roundabout way for their cause. And when punk came along, what suddenly happened was they kind of diverted a lot of these guys into the punk scene, and so we'd be playing gigs, and they were getting more and more violent. But the irony of it was that it was a very small number of people that caused chaos. You know, as it's always the way with all these things, a few people fuck the whole thing up for everybody else.
True.
And so we played gigs, and the next morning all the tabloid press and stuff, the headlines would be, you know, right wing riot at Sham 69 gig, and it did us a lot of harm, because in the end a lot of people would just see the headlines and start to think, oh, hold on, this Sham must be a right wing band, when it couldn't have been anything further from the truth, you know. And it was such a small amount of people, and okay, yeah, they were initially skinheads that were doing that, but in my experience, 90% of the skinheads that were coming to our gigs were cool people. They were people who were hanging out with black people and had a love for reggae and ska and stuff like that. And it was such a small minority, but the damage you can do when you start running havoc in gigs, and especially small gigs in those days, you know, it looked like absolute chaos, and it did us a lot of harm.
Well, it's not like you guys were Screwdriver or something. Jeez.
Christ, yeah, thank God.
Right? Those guys, you can't even mention that band without somebody wanting to punch me, so I'm not a fan of Screwdriver.
God knows what happened there. Do you know, they were suddenly on the scene in the very early days, and it's one of those bands that, you know, first of all, you kind of everybody thought they were kind of cool, and
well, the first album was a good punk rock record.
Yeah, you know, it was like, I mean, I'd see them down the local club at the Marquee or the Vortex. I think they may even have supported us on a couple of times, and all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, something switched or somebody got to them, and it was like a complete turnaround, and Jesus wept, you know. It was like, and again, they were one of the main bands promoting all that shit, and people went along with it. And it's a shame, because you know, I tell you, you know, there's, at that age, I think people are so sort of like vulnerable to peer pressure and stuff like that, and there were an awful lot of people following that stuff who didn't really understand what they were following. And it would be quite often at gigs, you know, I'd have people coming backstage, and one of the things that's kind of nice in some ways, that you could actually speak to people, and you just think, fuck me, where are you coming from? And they're so spouting all this kind of stuff off, and you could sit down and talk to them and put it in perspective, and they'd leave the room and say, no shit, I'm dumping that stuff, and you actually feel like you'd actually sort of progress somebody to sort of thinking for themselves, rather than just following their older brothers who's caught up in all this crap.
Yeah, crazy. I'm glad those guys are no longer around. Dave, what are your favorite Sham '69 songs?
Oh, it's so hard. It's so hard to say. I mean, we've been putting albums out since the mid '70s, right up until a few years ago, and it kind of changes, and it's hard to remember how certain songs at the time affect you differently, and as you get older, you're working on new material, and all of a sudden that takes precedence. And I think with fans and music, certain songs happen at a certain point in your life, and they take on a whole meaning of what was going on in your life at that time, and that embodies that whole kind of thing. It's very hard for me to say. I think probably one of in most people's minds is when they think of Sham, I think a song maybe like "If the Kids Are United" probably stands out as what we stood for. I think really in a lot of ways. It might be my favourite song one night, but then another song might be my favourite song on another night.
Makes sense. Yeah, I'm gonna play that song following the interview. I love that song so much. If the kids are united, they'll never be divided.
Great, thanks. Yeah, that really was what we stood for, and that came out as you were talking about, the violence and the skinheads and stuff, and that kind of came out of that because when punk started in the early years, I mean, we really thought that for once the kids of our age kind of had an affinity together. We were actually coming together, and we had kind of some sort of strength. For the first time, these people, 16, 17, we actually had kind of some strength in numbers. All of a sudden, we were given a stage to stand up and speak on and say how we felt. And we thought, and we could probably have made a difference had we been united. And it's the old divide and conquer type of thing. And as soon as the divisions struck and turned people around to fighting against each other, the Skins were fighting the punks were fighting the Teddy Boys. It was just so dumb, when we could have got together and created a voice that could have actually made some real change, That was the great shame, I think, and that's for us why the Kids United came. That's where it came from. Well, a great explanation. Thank you for that. The band eventually started to move away from your earlier direction. Maybe around the third album, you had clearly a new sound, embracing more of the tradition of Mott the Hoople, the Who, the Faces. Was there a reason for that, or is that just a natural progression? I think it was. I think it was a natural progression. I think there's it was a natural progression, and I think it was honesty as well. I think it's kind of. Things have to move on. Things can't stay stagnant. You can't continue doing. Otherwise, what you're doing is it's like the worst part of pop music is where a band has a formula and your record company saying, right, this is the formula. You've got to keep turning out singles like this and songs like that. You've got to stay where you are because this is where the money is. And we were one of the few punk bands, certainly in England, that didn't deny our roots. There was all this like, we hate the Stones, we hate the Beatles, we hate all this, and we never went down that route. We always appreciated that we had roots, we came from somewhere, and there were certain bands before us, obviously, that kind of turned us on to be rebels, if you like, or to want to go down that route. So we didn't deny those roots. So we weren't embarrassed to go into a studio and whatever was in us, let it come out and not censor ourselves, or more so not let the record company censor us. Say this is what where we're at the moment. This is what we're doing. This is how we feel, and this is what's going to go out. And in a lot of ways, we were lucky because a lot of bands were stamped on and told you can't do that. You've got to stick down this line. And we had a deal where we had a lot of artistic freedom to be able to do that. So whether people liked it or not, that was honesty from where we were coming from, That's very cool, very cool. And also, you hooked up with one of my favorite singers of all time in punk rock in the 80s when you joined the Wanderers with Stiv Bators. Right. Yes. Yeah.
What was that like in a nutshell?
Oh God, blimey, that's a big flipping nut, that one. Well, you know, I mean, with the band for whatever reasons, the Sham had come to a point where we really had to sort of like knock it on the head, at least for the time being, and Jimmy had got some solo deals, so the band was standing around, what we're going to do, you know, let's get another singer and let's carry on. And we toyed around with different ideas of different singers. The guy from the Pogues we approached, and the guy from Eddie and the Hot Rods, the singer, was approached. And then we thought, hold on a minute, you know, when we played LA and New York, we hooked up both times. We hooked up with Stiv. He was Stiv came down to see us at Hurrah's in New York he brought me, and Anita Pallenberg came down with him and stuff. And then when we were in LA further, we hung out with him. We were hanging out with Kim Fowley and various other people, and ended up at one of his sessions where he was recording his album for Bomp Records. And we just got on really well with him, and we kind of, our heads were kind of in the same place. And we said, yeah, what about Stiv? What's he doing at the moment? So let's call him up. So we called him up and said, look, you know, are you interested in maybe getting together and doing some shit? And he got back and he was up for it. So that's kind of how that happened.
Were you a Dead Boys fan?
Well, I mean, not over the top. I mean, I knew a few of their tracks, which I really liked. It was funny that the English punk scene was so full on. It was kind of like often at that point in history, hearing what was coming through from America was quite sparse. You'd hear odd tracks and odd bits. Someone would say, "Oh, you got to listen to this guy. You got to listen to that guy." You know, and I mean, obviously bands like the Heartbreakers and stuff like that. So yeah, you know, what I'd heard of Stiv, I loved. You know, obviously, because otherwise we wouldn't have asked him to join and stuff.
Right. Yeah, he was one of a kind, that's for sure. I just saw a great documentary about him. It was really good.
Was that the Danny Garcia one?
I believe so. I'm not positive, but I think so.
Yeah, okay. I haven't actually seen it, but I mean, I think, yeah.
And Sham was the first band to tour China, too, I heard, in 2009. The first major punk band to go to China, huh?
Yeah, that was that's another story. That was with a slightly different lineup. At that point, I'd stopped working with Jimmy and the other band. We'd had a bit of a fallout, and I'd put up, I suppose, what I would really with a kind of a pickup band, because Jimmy didn't want to play that many gigs abroad at the time, and I was getting frustrated, and I really wanted to get out there and take the Sham songs to places where they weren't being heard, you know. And we had the opportunity to go out there, so we did, and it was quite an experience. It was a tough flipping trip, I tell you, but it was an experience I wouldn't have missed.
Did the Chinese take to the music well?
Yeah, they loved it. There's a great underground punk scene in China, and
wow. I didn't know.
Yeah, which as you can imagine is very hard to sustain. I mean, you know what the Chinese are like. Jesus wept. It's kind of. I was even when they invited us to go out there, I was kind of surprised that we could even actually manage to do that.
Wow.
And I think in the end, we ended up going. It was slightly illegal the way we went out there, so we were constantly being watched. And we were in. I remember we were in. We had a film crew out there filming bits and pieces. We were in Tiananmen Square, just walking around, and it only took a few seconds before all of a sudden we had people. This woman came out to us, and she's like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And they were obviously, they'd spotted us a mile off, you know, and we had to say, "Oh, we're just here looking at your wonderful country and just filming a bit of home video and stuff." And luckily we got out of there and managed to move on and complete the tour. But they really didn't want any negativity from coming out of there at all, or any change of opinion from their own opinion, you know.
Well, just stay away from North Korea, I guess.
I've got no plans to tour there at the moment, that's for sure.
If you do, you might need 2 bottles of whiskey.
Yeah, at least something, yeah.
So how's Jimmy doing today?
He's all right. I mean, you know, it's such a bizarre time. I mean, you asked me that question, I think, bloody hell, it's been quite a long time since I've seen him. I mean, the last gig we played was almost a year ago.
Wow.
And you know, we're in you know, in English terms, we're in different parts of the country. In American terms, it's probably just down the road, but it's far enough that we don't sort of see each other that much if we're not playing, you know. And I think he's, you know, Jimmy's a resilient character, and he bears up and he does what he does. And when we get together, I love it. There's no one. I tell you, there's no one on this planet like that guy. I mean, he's a madman, but he's very focused, and he's got some great ideas, and I love the guy. But he can be the most frustrating person you've ever met in your life.
A lead singer being frustrating? What?
yeah. But I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, that's what it takes. I mean, a front person has to be. A good front person has to be completely off the wall and you know, bordering on narcissism, if you like. I mean, otherwise, how can they do that job? You know.
I'm a lead singer myself. I'll just pretend you didn't.
Okay. Fair enough. I'm sure you're not a narcissist.
Not at all. Wow, man, that's really good talking to you, Dave. I wish I had more time. We literally only have like a 20-minute slot, but maybe down the road we could arrange to do a part 2 or something like that. It would be quite the honor.
Yeah, it'd be cool, man. Good speaking to you.
Yeah, I have a million other questions, but if I do, it's going to take us into about an hour, which I would love to do. So maybe I could hit you up in a few months, and if you would be kind enough, I'd like to talk with you again sometime. Yeah,
I'll be happy to do that, man.
That'd be cool. And I want to say thank you to Graham on the air for helping me sort of hook up with you and, you know, told me to go for an interview. So thanks to Graham.
Yeah, lovely guy. Really lovely guy.
Yeah, I'm actually, my landlord here in the States in Oregon is his cousin. So that's how I met Graham, through my landlord.
Oh, he seems to have contacts everywhere, that guy.
Yeah, he's really cool, man. I really like that guy. So cheers to Graham. Well, Dave, hello to your family and stay safe during the pandemic. And we'll be listening to your music, of course, and keeping it alive. And thank you for all your great punk rock and roll all these years, and much respect.
Cheers, man. Good to speak to you, and take care of yourself.
Okay, thank you, Dave, and take care.
Cheers. Bye now.
All right, bye-bye.